I'm starting to evaluate another aspect for why these bend-assisted jumps could be beneficial in my training program at the moment. And it all comes down to sort of a lazy approach that I had in this session here, where I wasn't pushing as much, but I was noticing that the few jumps where I was pushing a bit more were causing a bit of instability, side to side mostly. But a quick side note on the weighted push-ups, because they're passing by, and it's mainly because the technique is looking really good, and since I was doing 13 and 12 reps on these two sets that I performed, I think I'll be going up to 15 kilos, which seems a reasonable increase that is going to put me down to maybe 8 reps, and then I'll build back up and see then maybe 20 kilos how that's gonna go. And then a bit of a different stimulus for the lats in a more explosive way with the mat ball that takes away some of the stress from the high volume that I'm doing on the pull-ups and the pullovers. But going back to the bend-assisted jumps, this is the second set, and I noticed that a couple of these jumps were kind of very high and still very controlled. Now, I don't really see myself from the back, which is how I establish whether I'm moving side to side, but I'm seeing that what this exercise allows me to do is to spend some quality time in the air. And in the air, I need to start learning how to control my body, especially my core and my glutes, in order to stay upright and not bend too much at the hips or twist sideways, which is going to take away from the air time, basically. So because the assistance actually allows me to spend a bit more time in the air, something that I wouldn't be used to when I'm doing just normal approach jumps, or even less with weighted jumps, I should really be taking advantage of this and not really tracking much the air time, but more focusing on what to do while I'm in the air. And there's not much that I'm going to do because I'm mainly going to be contracting everything to make sure that I don't leak energy from any side. But I hope that this is going to provide some use in carryover over to the normal jumping. Looking at the way that these weighted jumps went, they weren't super great. The first set was decent. I had the third one that I measured at 580 milliseconds, but that was the best one. Because then after the set of Luresis, I went into another set and they were all in the 560s. So I think that I gave it all that I had in the first set, and the second one was a bit too much. I usually do 2 sets only, so it's okay. It's extra volume, but it wasn't really as good. The first one was decent, and body control was okay. Maybe a bit of an extra extension, but since I'm carrying weights in my hands, it's not easy to keep the torso fully extended. The weights are kind of pulling me forward a little bit. One thing that I did notice, and it's unrelated to the jumping, but it's in regards to the Luresis, is that I wasn't feeling as much annoyance in my rotator cuff as I was doing these reps. Now, I don't know if there is an improvement coming up or not, but I noticed a sharp change in the way that they felt from the previous session, and the weight was the same. So maybe it's good to stay with this weight and see how things progress. Ciao.